The first one is because Marco Rubio was on the program yesterday, and he said he had to decide whether to run for president about a year from now. Is that your timetable as well?
Look, I certainly think it is no secret I'm thinking about it, but I think anybody that's thinking about it needs to do so after the 2014 elections. I think that's right. I think it needs to be after November. We all need to be united and focused on winning 36 governor's races, taking the Senate back, winning, keeping the House. A lot of important elections. But I also think we need to spend this time winning the war of ideas. It's not just about winning the elections. It's about, and that's important, but, as Maggie Thatcher said, you got to win the debate of ideas before you win the election. Let's go show them that conservative ideas work. So, yeah, I think he's right in his timeline.
Yeah, it's true about that. But if you're running for president, your health care plan means a lot more than if you're just being a public intellectual. And so do you think is a year from now the latest at which someone can get going?
Well, look, you never want to say never, because in the last few cycles we've seen people jump in super early and super late. I think folks need to be able to go and make their case to the American people. I think this next election needs to be about more than personalities. I think folks that are serious about running need to go out there and say not only how they're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, but I think they need to sketch out a vision for the folks to know that how do we get America back on track again? This president has unfortunately, I think, diminished people's expectations of what's possible. He has sold us the fact that 2 to 3% economic growth is recovery. He has sold us, tried to sell us on the fact that a diminished America on the world stage is a good thing. He has tried to sell us on the fact that a decaying culture is a good thing. So I think that this is a very important election, and it needs to be about substance, not just slogans and campaign ads and personalities, though that's obviously always going to play a role. Let's go have a real debate about where do we go from here and how do we get back on track as a country.
And I'd like to see that debate, sir, not debates, but that debate begin in November as soon as the election's over. I don't think people should be waiting until spring of 2015. So just to wrap up this thing, you agree a year from now is about as late as you could go?
Yeah, no, look, I think that folks have a right to want to kick the tires, meet folks. Again, you never say never, because who knows? People last cycle were dropping in and out at all kinds of unexpected days. Yeah, I think folks that want to run need to certainly not do it before November elections. Let's get past that. But shortly after, I think it's a reasonable time frame for people to have time to go make their case and try to persuade folks. Because, look, being leaders, especially conservative leaders, it's not about just taking polls and trying to get in front of where people are. It's trying to also make our case that conservative principles work better. A lot of that's persuasion. And a lot of that's saying, hey, we think school choice works. We think tenure reform works. We think domestic energy production leads to manufacturing jobs. We think a whole host of things that are different from where this president's been taking us. And I think you got to go spend some time convincing and showing folks why they should agree with us.
Now, your health care plan is very interesting. America Next put it out, the Freedom and Empowerment Plan, it's called. It comes from a point of view. Let me begin with, I think, very important. You're a devout Catholic, right, Governor?
I am.
What do you think of Pope Francis, by the way?
Look, I think the liberal media, I'm excited that the Holy Father is bringing so much energy and enthusiasm to the church, causing folks to look again at the essential claims of Jesus Christ in the Gospels. I think that the liberal media, it's not unexpected, is trying to misunderstand or contain his message. And they're trying to make it, and you saw this after the president's visit with him. They were trying to make it all about, it was almost as if they were trying to portray it. If you read some of those stories, it was almost as if the Pope had endorsed the president's agenda, and it was all about redistribution. Look, you can't contain the gospel in a political party, but the reality is this is a leader of a faith who talks eloquently and writes eloquently about the need for redemption, the need for the empty tomb, the need for Jesus getting up off the cross for all of us. This is a leader that is causing folks to re-examine. I think that's especially important, re-examine our lives in a society that's becoming more and more secular. I also believe, and I think this is going to come out more and more, that this is a Holy Father who also has a lot to say to the country and the world about religious liberty. One of the things that concerns me the most, whether you're Catholic or not, I think, or Christian or not, or whatever your faith, or whether you have a faith or not, I think all of us should be worried about this administration's war on religious liberty. It's bigger than Hobby Lobby. It's bigger than the case before the Supreme Court. It really is an assault on the ability of Americans to hold their sincerely held religious beliefs. Religious liberty created this country, not the other way around. And so, look, I'm excited for the energy he brings to the church and the Christian message. I do think the liberal media is trying to contain him and limit what he has to share with the world.
Part of that liberal media, my friend E.J. Dionne, likes to, and he's a devout Catholic too, likes to talk about how the Pope is very concerned for the poor. Do you think Pope Francis understands free market economics, Bobby Jindal?
I think a lot has been made about some of his commentary and writings. I'd say two things. One, I think it's dangerous, and I don't want to fall in this trap either of trying to say that, I made fun of the liberal media for trying to say, well, the Pope was endorsing the president's message. I don't want to try to pretend like the Pope is endorsing conservative Republican views on tax rates and other things that we fight and care about. But I do think that it's important to understand when he's talking to a global audience about the exploitation of the underprivileged and those that, we've got to understand that he's speaking to a global audience. I think it's a big mistake to try to translate this leader of a global faith into, well, therefore he must be for or against charter schools, or he must be for or against my tax package. I've got enough humility to know that that's not the right way to try to look and understand what his message is. I think that we shouldn't fall into the same trap as the liberal media. Now, as a Catholic, I do believe that free markets, and not just as a Catholic, as a conservative, as a Republican, as a public policy person, I do think free markets, and I don't think this is easily disputed, I do think free markets have done more to lift people out of poverty than all these other different redistribution schemes in our modern history. When you look at now, that doesn't mean that free markets by themselves are perfect, or that we don't need to help folks that are being left behind, but free markets have created more opportunity, have helped more people join the middle class, and have had a transformative effect on more people's lives than all of these other redistributive government-focused programs. And I think that tells something.